I just wanted to bring up this slide again because it's Mixxx from Mixxx.org if you'd like to get it and try it out yourself. We're not going to be relying on any additional hardware. We're just going to use your computer keyboard. So we're going to talk about what DJing is, the minimum viable product of music theory that you need, audio engineering concepts, processing your songs so you could get them ready, working on DJ sets, then doing it live, and then we'll talk about what's next after you get through a lot of this stuff. So sorry, I have to say this right before we get started. We are talking about art, and there is no right or wrong. I'm just very opinionated, so I'm sharing my opinions, but yours are also correct, at least for you, and that's what's important. This is about showing you what works for me, so that hopefully if it works for you, you can apply it, and if you don't like it, at least you know exactly what not to do and save yourself some time. Sorry if I'm talking quickly, but I know I'm very late. So what DJing is, and I mean, DJs are usually late anyway. In its essential form, it's playing music for you and yourself and your friends that you all enjoy. If you ever just picked out a Spotify playlist, you're already a DJ. Now, at its worst, it's a really long night after a really long day and nobody appreciates it. But at its best, you're creating a transformative experience that your audience is going to love, and it's going to take them on a journey, and they'll remember that for the rest of their lives. And throughout an event, you'll probably cycle through all three of those. What I think it shouldn't be, just a self-indulgent one-way conversation. That's just somebody going up there and just playing whatever they want without taking into consideration the people that are supposed to be listening and dancing to it. Also, the second point, perhaps just kind of not representing yourself properly and just playing music that you don't like for people that you don't like. That's also not enjoyable. And lastly, in any way being dishonest. Just be yourself. If you're playing what you truly love, somebody out there will love it and it will resonate with them, and then they'll appreciate your work. So enough philosophy, more listening. So let's talk about some of the minimal music theory that you need. We're going to talk about beats, bars, and phrases, tempo matching, and then keys. So in music, a lot of the basic dance music is grouped into bars of 4 beats. That's kind of the smallest musical idea, but it's just an introduction. A lot of musical ideas have a sense of closure to them. So you can have like one bar opening an idea and another bar closing the idea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you take a couple of those and you take another pair of those, then you end up having a 32 beat phrase. This is one of the best kind of chunks of information to work with, a 32 beat phrase. We'll use that soon. Then we'll talk about tempo. All your music will have varying tempos, genres. One of the things that makes them a genre is that they usually stick within certain tempo ranges. So let's say you've got 2 songs. The top one is at 120 beats per minute. The bottom one is at 130. So the bottom one is going through its musical information much faster than the first one. In the same amount of time, that second one will hit its 13th musical note or beat by the time the first one is at its 12th. So, you know, if you were to just hit play on both of them, they would be out of sync. So what are our solutions? Well, you can take that second one that was at 130 and slow it down to 120, or you could do the opposite, take the one that was 120 and speed it up to 130. So we'll show you the software here. This is where you get to adjust the speed of a song, but we'll do that for reals later. Where'd you go? Oh, there we go. All right, musical keys, that's kind of a bigger thing. Let's just talk about that later if we have enough time. So enough numbers, more listening. Let's talk about audio engineering, like volume, equalizing, and clipping. So volume is your primary tool when you're mixing music. And you have multiple ways to control volume. Like at the very top of a mixer, this is a Pioneer mixer, an actual hardware mixer, and you'll find analogs of that in the software. So those little knobs at the very top control the volume of each of the channels. So you can kind of adjust a permanent kind of compensation of levels for one song compared to the other one. Then you've got your individual channel faders. Those control the volume of the specific song, and you could use it more of as a temporary compensation of volume. Then you've got your crossfader. That lets you blend between the two songs back and forth. And then you've also got your main volume for everything. So if we go back to the software, these are the gains. Like, actually, let me show you all a song. So if we were to play this one, you can set the stable compensation here. You see it get nice and fat like that. This is the volume of that. You still see it coming in, but there's nothing in the middle coming out. That's your mix. And these are the EQs. This is the mids. Keep forgetting that I have to do that. So I kind of jumped ahead of myself because now we're going to talk about equalizing. We're focusing on that little area of the mixer with the orange box. Equalizing is volume control for specific frequency ranges. So we've got 3 knobs there. The high knob, that controls things like the higher frequencies, like hi-hats, percussion, like shakers and tambourines, and also sibilants, the letter S. The mids control a lot more of the musical information, like vocals. And the low knob controls lower things like the kick drum, bass, or sub bass. That is a huge component of electronic music. Then you've got your filter at the very, very bottom, where if you move it counterclockwise, it removes the high end. And if you move it clockwise, it removes the low end. So let's go back to the software. This makes me want to check that everybody can see everything. Well, let's go back to the software. So let's do this song I thought was pretty to listen to. So this is the high frequency. We could turn it down, darken things up, or brighten things. The mids, you'll see, you'll hear the vocals drop out. And that kick drum should go away now. And here's that filter. So moving on. Clipping is the harsh distortion of audio when you just turn it up way too far. It sounds terrible. I'm not going to do that to your ears. Just know that it distorts sound by just pushing it way too past the limit. Imagine if the sound was that little white dotted line. Well, digital audio has a limit. So if you go past that, it still has to represent it with that black line. So what used to be nice and smooth is now flat and harsh. It destroys your bass. So just don't do it. Keep your volume in the yellow. Avoid the red. Hitting the red every once in a while is okay, but not if you just have a lot of steady red. So enough science, back to the songs. Processing your songs, here's where you get to prepare your ingredients. You get to set quantitative things like BPM, markers, and cue points. Then you get to do qualitative things like talking about genres, energy, and other tags. So usually your BPM is automatically detected, but it may be wrong, so you got to tap it out. And I'll show you how to do that as well. And sometimes it could be correct, but the beat grid could be misaligned, so you just have to nudge it. Here, that drum beat right there at the top, the red part is actually the kick drum. That would be the beginning, but the beat grid was detected a little bit to the right. So all we had to do to fix that was nudge it over and get those clicks right where the kick drum is at. So for example, let's go to this. This is an example of using playlists, which we'll cover later. So here we go. That's where we start. The thing is, we would want that little white line here, so we can do is do that and fix it. This is really important because all the other things that you want to do, you need something stable like that first. That looks way better. That sounds way better. Now, talking about markers, cue points. Each song is kind of like a little ear movie. There's an introduction, rising action, a climax, falling action, and a conclusion. But that would make a really short movie, or song, sorry. So a lot of times you could just put two of those together, have a second set of rising action, climax, and falling with a little break in the middle there. So we can set markers to map out a song in all those sections. And these are common names that people assign to them, like an intro, a build. The main body of a section, a lot of people call the drop because of the anticipation leading up to something and then getting a release, a drop of something, a cathartic release. Then you've got a breakdown, another build, another drop. I put a question mark at that section because I don't really know what to call it, but I like knowing when there's going to be a drop in energy. Sometimes you can mix into that. And then you've got an ending. And you can set cue points to jump to those songs in a section and navigate your way around. So here's an example. These are the cue points I like to set. I like to set an intro, the build, and the drop, the breakdown, and those two other two. You may notice that I don't have them in sequential order because those buttons let you set your cue points. And like in my hardware controller, I only have buttons 1 through 4. So it's important for me to be able to jump to like a 4 at the end, but I just want to know that the breakdown, that number 7 is coming up. Anyway, so you can also set loops. If you notice that little green highlighted area, you could just set up an end loop and then just take your time mixing in your next song. And one tip I would give you is set these markers after the BPM and grid and try to be consistent with your numbers. Like for me, my number 3 is always my first drop, so that whenever I bring up a song in my headphones and I hit the number 3, I can already hear the main body, the most important information of that song. Then I'll worry about going back to the intro and mixing it in. So now let's show you how to do this in the software. So if we just hit play, we're going to call that the intro, number 1. Still in the intro. This should be a build, and this is also going to be a 32 beat phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I love CZ.
7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2, 3, 4. And you would kind of do that for the rest of your song. Now let's talk about qualitative things. You're adding metadata. I'm going to try to use words that resonate with this audience. So you've got genres, which are just labels that make sense to you. You might need to limit the ones that you use, though, just so you don't overcrowd your information. I'll explain that in a moment. Also, talking about the energy of your songs, I recommend picking a small scale to rate your songs. A 1 to 10, that just sounds like too much information, because what's a 7 compared to an 8? I started off with 1 through 4, and I ended up settling on a 1 through 5 scale, just because, I don't know, that felt smaller. Oh man, we're totally running out of time. Working on DJ sets. Okay. So let's say you have all your music in quick links. These are all the songs that I have. There we go. You can set a crate so that you have a collection of songs. Let's say I'm going to create a new crate, and I'm going to call it day, because I have a lot of songs that I've described with the word day.
Hey, Joseph. I just wanted to
Yes.
come in and let you know that we have plenty of time, so feel free to take your time, okay? There's a big break between sessions.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Thank you so much. I really
Continue
appreciate
on.
it. Thank you. So we can just right-click here and add to that crate. I really appreciate the sorting functions within Mixxx. So now if I go to crate, I have a sub-selection of songs here. I've also set up a few other ones that we can kind of go and add things to. I'm going to clear this search, because if you're trying to improvise in the middle of a set, just having to type things out, you can do a lot of this preparation beforehand. So let's see, like I'm going to add this song to halftime drum and bass. Oh yeah, and you can see here that it's already in multiple crates. That's really nice. Now you've got a crate of a whole kind of genre. Let's say I want to make a playlist, which would be I covered the quick links, which is that huge, that bigger playlist of songs. Sorry, bigger list of songs. Let me not use the word playlist, but we still need to filter. So that's when we talked about crates, which was an unordered collection of songs. And then I recommend making those for genres, moods, or those common searches that you would perform, just so you make it easier on yourself. Now, playlists, here's where you get to make an ordered list of songs, and I recommend making those for events. So let's go back over to the software. Let's make a playlist for today. Go to all my music again. And I told myself to choose these 3 songs. And lose yourself. Now in the DevConf playlist, I want to do that. So now we're talking about crafting sets. What can you use to help guide your decisions? Well, when I got into the ecstatic dance community, that's a community where people play music to truly enjoy the music on its own. It's not at a bar, it's not so much at a club. It's truly to be in a meditative state while you get to explore dancing by yourself or with others. I highly recommend those. Gabrielle Roth invented a system called Five Rhythms, where she researched lots of different music, different cultures, and she came up with kind of 5 rhythms that help identify things, claiming that everything is energy, moves in waves, patterns, and rhythms. You've got flowing, staccato, chaos, lyrical, and stillness. What does that mean? Well, if you tie them to emotions or life stages or perception, you kind of start seeing that she was able to ascribe them to, let's say, like for me, the most tangible one was kind of the life stages. If you're talking about flowing representing birth, staccato representing a building into childhood, chaos being puberty when you're discovering yourself, but also clashing with others, lyrical when you're achieving a sense of maturity, and stillness when we reach death. Well, looking at all these different descriptors, you can kind of see that with flowing, we're talking about opening, an opening kind of propelling forward, but it's still low energy. Staccato represents something more stable, but mid energy. Chaos is higher energy, it's wild. Lyrical, it's a release from the chaos. It's, for lack of a better word, pretty, and also mid or perhaps lower energy. And then you've got stillness at the very end, which it's also low energy, but it's got a closing feeling to it. This should remind you of what we talked about before. So the thing is, the 5 rhythms says that they work in a circle. You can kind of go back and forth and move along the circle. So if you take this and apply it to that previous thing with the hill, you can kind of take a set over time and navigate through that cycle on a micro level, like all those little humps, and also on a macro level for your, hour and a half or 2-3 hour set, and build something where you start kind of low, you hit a little bump, and then you back off. You go back to, let's say you start flowing, you go to staccato, you maybe hit on chaos a little bit, and then you back down to staccato. Then maybe you go up to chaos again, and then you push your audience really far, and then you release and you go to lyrical. You get pretty again, you lower the energy. Then you can perhaps go back to chaos, or maybe go to stillness, run through flowing again, and go to staccato, back and forth, back and forth. So now let's talk about doing it live. Let's talk about phrasing. Here's a representation of 2 songs. Each of those little blocks is a 32-beat phrase. So we got 2 songs, they're the same structure. It's just 2 mirror images just to make it easy for us to talk about layering them on top of each other. So the thing about phrasing is not just matching the beats, but actually matching the larger information, the larger patterns, the larger changes. Try to line up your songs so that they go through those changes at the same time. So you could do something where you have the green song stacking its intro where the blue song starts fading out on its musical information, and then the green one takes over. Now you could do something where the blue one kind of just starts, builds, gets to the drop, and as soon as it hits the break, you layer the intro of the green song. So you can see, you can kind of Tetris this however you want. You've got an infinite amount of options where you could do something like do an intro build and a drop of one song, then an intro build and drop of another one, then another one. So basically you just get this dense amount of musical information for a while, and then maybe you'll let something go through a breakdown and give your audience a break. Or you could do something where, let's say you have the blue song playing, and then when it hits its breakdown, you can tease in the information from the green one just to give somebody a sense of what's coming up, but then back off, let the blue song keep playing out, and then do that thing where you introduce the green song as the blue one is running out. I'm about to show you all this stuff in the software. This is just when it all comes together. Now you can use subtractive EQing to compete, to turn down competing elements from the music, because if you're mixing in 2 songs, with, let's say, vocals, and they're both singing things at the same time, you can only have one lead singer, really. So you might have to turn down the volumes on one or the other. And also, when you're talking about bass, try to only have one bass line at a time. So you may want to just turn down the bass on one of your new song while you're bringing it in. Then you also have your filter, which is like a power EQ. You can use that to mix smoothly between songs by darkening out the end of one song. That's what I like to use it for. Or if you start with it low, you could start with a song kind of muffled, but I don't do that too often. The high pass, you can fizzle a song away as you take it, as you filter it out, or you could start off high with just the percussion. None of that makes any sense because we're talking about sound, so I got to show you. So let's throw this song here and lose control. All right, so check this one out. It's got drums. If I thin it out, I can play this song. I've got to get the right tempo. I'm going to take down the bass of the one on the right. I'm going to get rid of the vocals from the one on the left.
I got a cute face, chubby waist, thick legs in shape.
So that's some of the options that you have. Reading a crowd, this is a really, really tough thing to try to work on. I'm nowhere near an expert. I think that's one of the challenges that everybody works on all the time. Again, since you don't want your DJ set to just be a one-way conversation where you're just yelling at the audience, you want to see if you can play a song and then notice how it hits, if people are liking it or if they're not. So if they do, if you're writing the right moment in time and everybody's loving it, keep going that direction. If you feel like you have to make a change and then you go that way and people aren't receptive to it, then perhaps make a different change. So again, just making it more of a two-way conversation instead of just somebody going up there playing, a list of songs that they just predetermined and it doesn't really respond to the event. So what's next? Well, you can mix in key. You can do back-to-back mixing with other friends, or you could go into streaming. So this is a huge oversimplification about mixing in key. Long story short, a musical key is the specific notes that a song uses. So let's say we're just going to use the keys on the bottom. That's the key of C major. If this doesn't make sense, don't worry. If you just noticed, I didn't do anything about mixing in key for the previous, 2 songs. Some musical keys are related. Let's say the key of C major has these notes. Well, there's also the key of A minor. Don't worry how we got that. That's just A minor. Well, if we just shift over C major, you see that they totally align C to C, D to D. They have all the notes in common. There are 2 other keys that also have a lot of notes in common with C major. So you've got C major, A minor, F major, and G major. Well, okay, so this is the Camelot wheel. That looks like a lot of information. Well, let's just focus on the C, the pink one at the top in the middle there. What they did is that we have a musical relation between the other keys next to it. So you remember we talked about C major sharing notes with A minor, F, and G? Well, it's those two just to the left and the right, or inside the same kind of color as that pink one at the top. So long story short, to make smooth moves, if you're playing a song that's in C, or let's not even worry about the letters, 1D, if we hold on to the D and we move over to from 1D to 2D, that's going to be a smooth transition between two songs. If we're at 1D and we move to 1M, if we hold on to the same number but just change between D and M, then we go from C major to A minor, which shares all the notes. So again, since it's kind of confusing to work with the real key letters like A minor, C major, they came up with this number system to substitute that. So all you have to worry about either moving with the same numbers or plus or minus a number with the same note. Sorry, it's hard to explain why 1 and 12 are adjacent, but they are because there's 12 notes on a keyboard. Back to bag and tag teaming. This is where you get to share a stage with your friends. So you can kind of work things out. So let's say if it's 2 people playing, you could do 3 and 3, where one person plays 3 songs, then the next person plays 3 songs, and then you go back and forth. What's pretty cool about that is that it's intentional. Imagine like volleyball. Somebody hits the ball over the net, you get to pop it up, set it, and then try to spike it. So you get to kind of receive what they do, steer it a little bit more, and then try to launch them in a direction. You can be malicious about that too. If you have a few people, you could do 2 and 2. It's a little bit faster. What they're probably doing on that stage right there is probably 1 and 1, where each person's playing one song. If it's only 2 people, it can get pretty chaotic, but it can be fun. And as a bonus, I recommend playing each other's music. Sometimes we will swap little USB keys so that hopefully your friends organize their music in a good way that makes sense to you. But it's really, really fun to hear somebody else play your music in ways that you wouldn't, because you would never put those 2 songs together, but they did because they didn't know better. But hey, that's great. And lastly, we talked about a lot of stuff. Just don't forget to have fun. That's the most important thing. If people see you having fun with it, they will also enjoy it. Good music, while people aren't having fun with it, isn't good music. So that's it. Thank you for showing up to my very late talk.
We have a few questions for you. So
Sweet.
let me
Thank
start.
you. I couldn't see any of that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I know. I was figuring when you were screen sharing, it was hard to do more than one at a time. I get it. I completely get it.
I need multiple monitors.
I know, right? You sure do. You sure do, especially for what you're doing there. Okay, so the first question is from Jiri. Are there any disadvantages to using a mixing software application rather than a fancy physical soundboard, apart from the lack of tactile connection?
So I've started focusing on DJing with a laptop because I like the ability to manage a large playlist, because I have a whole bunch of music. So I wouldn't see many downsides to it. I guess it's just, actually, yeah, you know what? I end up using my eyes a lot. One thing that I want to start focusing on is playing on CDJs, where it's just essentially just, a controller with a little wheel on it, probably what you normally see photos of DJs with. Yeah, that's the thing, because there you're playing much more of an instrument. Hopefully, you know your music better. You're relying much more on the mechanics of it. I'm kind of splitting the difference. I DJ with a laptop, but then I have a hardware controller, because yeah, you can't be actually grabbing the EQ knob and twisting it, or grabbing the crossfader and actually doing that, responding in time, because you need an instrument. You need a physical instrument to manipulate properly. I hope that helps.
I think it does. I think Great. Yeah, Jerry. Thank you, Jerry, for responding in chat. All right, our next question. So I'm going to skip over the first part of this question so it doesn't get recorded, but you can see it in the Q&A. So would you like to join Moises in the DevConf radio and play some songs at the end of the day to accompany the mocktail session?
Sure.
Great. All right, so I'll let the both of you connect after this session and figure out the details of that. And then I had a question for you. So I've been watching a lot of music Reddit sets lately, and you were talking a little bit about that connection with the crowd. And I am wondering what it feels like, the difference between doing what you just did and then doing it in a crowd where there are people like right in front of you, and how you manage that.
Unfortunately, you just have to do it a lot. I still get, I mean, I have stage fright now, so it's not a thing that I think I've come to terms that I will ever get over. I try to turn that into a positive thinking that, yeah, then it means a lot to me. But really, what made it easier was starting off playing in my room, then starting to play in the living room with friends over, and then starting to play at a very small party where nobody really cares, and then getting to bigger and bigger events. So you kind of slowly eke yourself forward so that, like, I still have trouble DJing and holding a conversation with somebody else. So kind of the more you start doing it, I guess you slowly, first you're looking at a picture of a snake, then you're in the room with a snake in the corner, and then eventually you're playing with the snake.
Fair enough. Okay, let's see. A new question just came in while on crowd versus virtual. Is Josip into Twitch? I've noticed a bunch of DJs I've followed are doing their gigs via Twitch, which is just amazing and allows more people to join and interact.
Twitch is amazing. Streaming is amazing. I meant to cover that, but that is a whole talk in itself because exactly, it gets very, very techy, but it's amazing. I mean, you know, the pandemic hit and nobody could go out and dance. And then amazing shows started coming out where, you know, then you're dancing in your living room. So I think it's given people a great opportunity to continue sharing in a way that's much more accessible to everybody on both sides, attendees and performers themselves. So I haven't streamed too much. That's a thing that I want to get into. I've started buying more and more equipment because you can make it really fancy, green screens, several camera angles. People do recommend getting a separate computer for the streaming. So you kind of have your music computer or, you know, CDJs, feed it to something else, and then have that broadcast. So you're not taxing the one computer with doing your audio and doing your video and doing the streaming. It's a lot.
All right. All right, folks. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for sticking around. I'm very sorry about the late start. I thought I was registered for the right thing.
It's okay, man. Things happen, and we're just glad that you were able to get in and then show us this. I will tell you that I selected this room for moderation because of this talk, so I was super excited to be able to hear what you had to say and the sharing that you just did. So thank you so much for your presentation, and I wish you the best of the rest of your day. And I'm going to check out the music now at the end of the conference.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for all the help.